If you've never seen me, I'm absolutely nobody. You probably won't remember me, but if the ideological evolution of modern psychology and cultural theory for the last 2 centuries interests you, then we should find ourselves on equal footing. With the release of the Epstein files and the brutal realization of the insidious agendas by foreign and domestic agents, the actions and livelihoods of history's most iconic names are brought into attention. In particular, is a man by the name of Sigmund Freud, an Austrian neurologist and psychologist who was a highly influential and controversial 20th century thinker. He's known as the father of psychoanalysis for developing the theory and therapeutic method to treat mental disorder through dialogue between patient and psychoanalyst. Freud's theories, which include the unconscious mind, dream interpretation, and psychosexual development of all ages, including infantile sexuality, helped shape modern psychology. This is not where our story begins, but to save us from a line of infinite regressions, in another video, I will briefly mention Freud's teacher. I'm no dilettante, but to the likes of Freud, Adler, Jung, his contemporaries, and contemporaries of psychoanalytical and psychotherapeutic thought today, I am a layman. I am also not an academic, nor am I accredited, nor do I possess any higher degrees in education in these fields of study. Though, nevertheless, that doesn't disqualify my efforts nor my opinions on the matter. Viennese psychiatrist Viktor E. Frankl, in his book The Doctor and the Soul, remarked how patients seek medical professionals but are desiring existential answers. It is for these reasons that a soft analytical thinker as myself, and a regular of philosophy, I find myself on a quest to uncover the psychological motives behind human beings. I'd like to approach this project genealogically so we can see the thought progression evolve over time. We will begin our endeavors with the psychological revolution, the main progenitor being Sigmund Freud and his radical claim of human beings being driven by unconscious forces. We will read books like his renowned pieces, Beyond the Pleasure Principle, 3 essays on the theory of sexuality, and civilization and its discontents. We will also study Freud's application of psychology to religion in his piece, The Future of Illusion, where Freud argues that religion is essentially a psychological defense mechanism where God becomes a projection of a father, a coping mechanism, and a symptom of collective neurosis. We will then embark on the Jung revolution, where Freud's most famous disciple, Carl Young, the Copenhagen psychiatrist, breaks away from the fundamental psychological thought. We will read books like The Undiscovered Self, The 4 Archetypes, and Answers to Job, and more. In a separate video, I would like to briefly mention Adler, but for the sake of this series, we will focus explicitly on the efforts and reactions of Freudian psychoanalytical and psychotherapeutic progress. Carrying on, we will consider the political mutation of Freud and its progenitor, Herbert Marcus, who applies Freud's idea of repression to modern capitalist society in his famous work, Eros and Civilization. Lastly, we will analyze the existential correction made by voices like Viennese psychiatrist Viktor Frankl and British psychiatrist Gerd HAIM. Frankl, in his work, The Doctor and the Soul, says, for the principles of existential psychiatry, which holds that man's search for a meaning in existence is a primary facet of his being, Gerd HAIM, a British psychiatrist, examined the psychiatric aspects of religion in an attempt to discover to what extent religious factors are responsible for the neurosis so prevalent in our society, while rejecting the Freudian theory that religion is a form of obsessional neurosis. Gerd HAIM does believe that many of the teachings and practices of Orthodox Christianity are conducive to psychiatric disorders. Whether contemporary developments have rendered any possible answers to these endeavors is to be decided. Sigmund Freud inspired Herbert Marcus. Herbert Marcus inspired counterculture. Counterculture has shaped the sexual revolution, identity politics, and liberation psychology. On the other hand, Carl Jung and Viktor Frankl have influenced spirituality, existential therapy, and methodological psychology, two entirely different visions of humanity have emerged. 6 psychologists have predicted the future of civilization. Which one was right? Freud and his post-Darwinian animalistic instinctual drives, or Adler and his post-Nietzschean power-to-will actualization? Does society truly repress us, or are we driven by meaning? What findings will be presented to the children of tomorrow? These are the questions under consideration. You will regularly hear me mention existential philosophy. This is primarily because existential philosophy and psychoanalytical theory are seeking to achieve the same unrequited ends: man's meaning and the reasons behind his impulses and inclinations. An additional project we will discuss is existential philosophy and its development, using William Barré's piece, The Irrational Man, as our anchor. It reads, "A study in existential philosophy, elusive definition of the 20th century existentialism, examining its origins, the thoughts of its major spokesmen, and its impact of literature, art, music, and philosophy today." William Barré's Irrational Man has been accepted as the finest definition of existentialism ever written. With superb clarity and understanding, he describes the root of existentialism in ancient thought and traces its appearance in the art and reflection of such men as St. Augustine, Aquinas, Pascal, Blake, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, Hemingway, Picasso, Joyce, and Beckett. The heart of the book is 4 long chapters in which he explains the views of its foremost spokesmen, Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, Heidegger, and Sartre. Professor Barré makes clear that existentialism is anything but a barren abstraction fit only for the classroom. Whenever men have insisted on the limits of reason, declaring that logic alone cannot account for the guilt, dread, anxiety, alienation, and latent meaninglessness of life, they have been taking an existentialist stand. For existentialism, as William Barré writes, whether successfully or not, has attempted to gather all the elements of human reality into a total picture of man. In any picture of man that fails to consider the irrational element, the absurd, will be incomplete. In Pascal's phrase, the heart has its reasons, which reason does not know, and because existentialism will not ignore these reasons, because it insists that the subterranean impulse, the furies within all of us, must be recognized, because it realizes that in this atomic age, we are in such peril of ceasing to exist before we have even known what our existence means. Because of these acute and urgent insights into the crisis of modern man, existentialism has become the philosophy for our time. Freud believed that religion would inevitably disappear. Jung believed religion would return in symbolic form, archetypal. Frankl believed meaning would outlast ideology. And history right now looks much closer to Jung and Frankl than Freud. If you've enjoyed this, please like, follow, subscribe, share the video, and tune in again for our second entry into Freudian psychoanalytical development. Ta-da!